Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, where the football chat flows like Jack Grealish's hair. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Now, you're welcome along to the football show. Happy to say Mr. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent is with us. Back on the road, Dan. Faro bound tomorrow, I think. Stephen Kenny named his 25-man squad since we last spoke last week. Portugal, 7:45 on Wednesday. That is where we are.
Yeah, it is, Joe. I'm actually heading out later tonight, so on the late flight. So back on the road again. All right, for a game of substance, that's for sure.
So there's a few things going on. Just saw some, it's not breaking news anymore, but it was earlier on this afternoon. Equal match fees officially announced for the Irish men's and women's teams. Seamus Coleman and Katie McCabe here in the statement talking about this. So it's understood that the senior men's team players were happy to accept a drop in their match fee.
Yeah, that's the information. All right, this is something that's been discussed for a while. Going back to, I suppose it all goes back to the sort of the strike or the sort of action taken by the women's players back in 2017, of course, when John Delaney was hoping everyone would be celebrating his nomination to the executive committee of UEFA. And of course, you had the small problem of the Irish women's team highlighting people changing in toilets and whatnot and sort of handing back tracksuits that way. And I mean, that obviously stimulated a discussion that continued. I remember in Noel Mooney's time, his brief time as interim CEO, was spoken about equal match fees. And off the back of the initial issue in 2017, I mean, at that stage, you would have had some players on the team who basically weren't even being barely even compensated for time off work they were taking. You know, it was a very sort of basic arrangement that they had. So they did then have an improved, like a match fee system with a bit of bonus and stuff introduced at around that point. But obviously that there was a continued discussion and move towards parity, which actually I think when three were sponsors of the team, there was a suggestion they were quite keen on that. Didn't happen then. It's taken a while, but it does appear that it has happened now. Jonathan Hill, I think, was asked about it last month and was just a little bit cagey about 100% committing to it, I guess, because they needed some buy-in, I think, from the men's team to reduce their fee, which is what's happened. I mean, you are still dealing with a broke organisation here, which is obviously all the problems that you have with Irish football come back to it. So they needed a bit of negotiation to make it work, to make it viable, and it appears that they've done that now. And it is a good news story, but I suppose in some respects, people maybe involved in women's football don't want these to be stories as well, but it's a necessary part of moving towards some kind of satisfactory arrangement. I mean, the idea that it was practically costing players a couple of years back to play for the national team is sort of unbelievable, and that's still the case for a lot of people in the National League here. They've tried to finally address some of that in the last year, so this is a step towards it.
Katie McCabe says this is a great day for Irish football. Seamus Coleman says, on behalf of the senior men's squad, I welcome the news today. So it seems the men were receiving €2,500, whereas the women were receiving €500. Presumably they've met somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure now of what the actual specific arrangement is, but this was something obviously was timed to be announced today. But I'm sure that information will be sort of gleaned out in the next while. But I mean, that's the inference from it. It's not, they haven't gone up to 2.5 per game. So yeah, they'll have met somewhere in the middle, I would assume. And I mean, I think, in terms of the men's team, obviously just contrasting situations. I mean, I think it's been pointed out some of the players, their match fees, they probably would have given them away to charity. But obviously you'd have some others who, you have Irish players now not exactly playing at premium clubs. So I mean, it's not, it's still not an inconsiderable amount of money for some of them, so it's obviously something they needed to arrange and discuss, and they've managed to do that.
Yeah. Just some news as well on a squad change. So as we know, Darren Randolph was left out of the squad named last week. Queeving Kelleher in, Gavin Bazzuno in, and Mark Travers in. Mark Travers has had to withdraw due to an illness. So it seems Darren Randolph not called up. Bohemians keeper James Talbot is in. In part, this is to do with Randolph trying to secure maybe a move away from West Ham. Is it, Dan, as opposed to, geez, you're really outside the tent now, Darren?
Well, yeah, so my understanding of it is anyway, I mean, certainly when it was announced, not announced, in fairness, I think it was Aidan Fitzmaurice and our website put it out there initially on the independent website, and Bo subsequently confirmed that Talbot was in, and certainly there was a lot of questions about Randolph straight away. But certainly for making some inquiries about it, I think Randolph is in the process of securing a move over the next 24 hours. And this is one of the things where you have a game on Wednesday with the transfer window closing on Tuesday. Now, Conor Harahan is doing a move today as well, it seems, and there's one or two others in the squad that are probably in discussions about various things. I mean, there obviously can be workarounds with it, but I definitely think that has complicated Darren Randolph's position. Now, people could say, well, he could still come in for the next two games, but I don't know. Yeah, I sort of was writing about this last week. I mean, I think going with Bazunu, Kelleher, and Travers for this game was a statement of sorts, albeit explained to some degree by Randolph being third choice at West Ham, has had an interrupted pre-season. He had COVID, so he's playing a bit of catch up. And I do think logically, for Darren Randolph, I mean, if he is moving club, if that can get done, probably makes more sense that he spends the next week or so maybe getting his feet under the ground there, rather than necessarily going away with Ireland and coming back in for 1 or 2 days training with a new club if you're with a view to playing for them. But it does, at the same time, of course, I mean, if it was absolutely urgent that Darren Randolph would be there, if he was desperately badly needed, I'm sure they would have been able to work around all of that stuff. And Stephen Kenny has decided that it's not essential for him to be there right now. And I do think the shirt is in the possession of the younger goalkeepers now. I do think Bazunu and Kelleher will be the number 1 and 2. While Kenny is in charge, I do think, I'm not sure if I envisage Randolph coming back into the squad and reclaiming the number 1 spot. I suppose unless he goes somewhere and suddenly starts performing unbelievably well. But I think Kenny seems quite committed to the young keepers that he has.
Bazunu played 90 minutes at the weekend for Portsmouth. Kelleher on the bench at Anfield. Who's likely to start here? Who's the man in possession? Is it Bazunu?
I think so. I mean, Bazunu's kept the goal he conceded at the weekend was the first he's conceded this season. It's been all clean sheets from Bazunu so far. When there's no doubt Kelleher was ahead of him, but then Bazunu got in March, and just the language of Stephen Kenny in the summer was very much like he wanted to play Bazunu against Hungary in that game because he wanted to give him experience of playing in front of fans. You know, he hasn't had a huge amount of that in his career. Then he gave Kelleher the second 45, and he was very impressive as well, very good. But I do think Bazunu probably is in possession at this stage, and he has the edge of he's played the previous 4 games, I think, for Portsmouth. So I don't know if there's an obvious reason for him to be taken out of the team, as much as Kelleher is very accomplished, would have played some games in pre-season for Liverpool. But I think Bazunu is probably, I think he's in possession, and I know that would have surprised people. That it's a surprise in the context of, say, if we had this discussion in January. But certainly all the indications are that he made such a good impression around the camp from when he came in straight away, that it's now, it is a case that he has jumped up the queue. So I would be slightly surprised if he was pushed back down it again, I have to say.
So Wednesday then, just to do a very brief Irish watch for people. And it's funny, I was reading the Sunday papers yesterday, we're harking back in many instances to October 2000, the last away trip to Portugal, 1-1 draw. Of the 14-man Irish squad that day for that match that evening, 9 were in the Premier League. That's not to mention, by the way, Robbie Keane over in Serie A as well. So we're not quite there, as we know, 20 years on. Premier League, Coleman and Shane Duffy both played the full 90. That was in Everton's win against Brighton. Aaron Connolly was on the bench, didn't come on. Adam Ida got 10 minutes for Norwich. They were beaten by Leicester. Conor Coventry, unused sub by David Moyes for West Ham. Kelleher, as I mentioned, on the bench against Chelsea. Kieran Clark, Jeff Hendrick, both unused subs for Newcastle. Matt Doherty, doesn't seem like it's happening for Matt so far, unused sub for Spurs yesterday. And you mentioned Harahan, who may be on the move as well. He was an unused sub. Down to the Championship, James Collins, 73 minutes. John Egan, played the full 90 for Sheffield United. Ryan Manning played the full 90. Shawnee Maguire, 87 minutes. Dara O'Shea played the full 90. Troy Parrott played the full 90 for MK Dons and assisted one of the goals and has scored a few recently himself. Daryl Horgan played the full 90. I know not all these players are in the squad, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Aidan McGeady played 86 minutes for Sunderland. Bazunu and Ronan Curtis both played the full 90 for Portsmouth. James McLean came on after about 54 minutes for Wigan. Jamie McGrath in Scotland played the full 90 for St Mirren. And over in Belgium, Josh Cullen played the full 90. I'm sure I'm missing out a couple there. But Stephen Kenny, by all accounts, was on a fairly mammoth schedule over the last couple of weeks. He was driving all around the UK.
Yeah, no, I suppose he didn't necessarily have the opportunity to do that at times last year, just with travel restrictions. But he's certainly taken the opportunity to do it now. And as you mentioned, yeah, there is there's a mixed bag, and as you said, like some of those mentioned aren't in the squad, but I mean, most of the players who are playing regularly are sort of in and around the squad. You know, I mean, like there's a lot of names there. I suppose to take it down to the more interesting ones or the more relevant ones in the context of where we're at. I think Troy Parrott certainly a relevant talking point now, because it's very unusual to have Irish players as maybe low as things have gone in recent times, to have League One players around the squad. Sometimes David Ford, when he was a goalkeeper, all right, and Bazunu's there on loan at the moment. But in terms of outfield players, you've got McLean moving to Wigan to get game time, and he is getting that now, as you mentioned. You have Daryl Horgan, who's been very consistent for Kenny, probably been one of his better players. Wickham, relegated from the Championship, but he's playing regularly in League One. Ronan Curtis is actually 5 Irish lads at Portsmouth. But the Parrott one is probably the most interesting one for me, because how long have we been talking about Troy Parrott as a potential star of the future? You had 2 loan moves last year that were pretty uninspiring, but he's gone to MK Dons now. I heard you joking on the paper review yesterday, I think it was with Connor or Gavin Comiskey, I think, that you haven't been watching much MK Dons, which is a fair enough comment, I think. But they are actually a club that are their approach to the game is they're appointing a coach now to play a certain progressive style of play. They created more chances than anyone else in the in League One, last year, and they're actually a really good development team for someone to go to. And Troy Parrott has started the season really well. He scored a couple of goals. I think he had a role in 2 goals at the weekend. I have been sort of catching the highlights, and he looks sharp. His movement has been good, and this might be a really good loan for him in the context of his career. Maybe too soon to necessarily say, you know, he all of a sudden becomes like a starter in Portugal. I'm not so sure about that, but I have to say, I would have said he had no chance in starting in Portugal in June. You played the Hungary game and you're thinking, yeah, it's going to need more time. But he is coming in really good form, you know, compared to some of the options that you mentioned there. And I think that loan for him is going to be very big in the context of his career. And maybe when it comes to Azerbaijan on Saturday, where Ireland are in a game where they need goals, that you're going to have to look towards the guys that are confident and in form. And I think Parrott is one that could be really interesting and really relevant.
Stephen Kenny was asked a good bit in the press conference, would he think about sacrificing the Portugal game? You know, there was harking back again to 2000. I think Mick McCarthy, in a sense, prioritised other games. And he said he wouldn't. He said he would do what they could to give it a go against Portugal. And they couldn't just go out and defend for the 90 minutes. They would have to try and play some football as well. Otherwise, the result would be inevitable. So give me a stab at what you think will be the starting 11, or who's definitely in.
Yeah, see, I don't think he can afford really to do that, Kenny, for a couple of reasons. But also as well, I mean, like, you know, his squad is weighted towards like being quite strong in some defensive areas. So just to answer your question there, I mean, it's very plausible that he can start with, well, Bazunu, I think, in goals, or Kelleher, but I think Bazunu. You know, 3 of the foreign players in his squad, arguably, or the most employed players in his squad, are centre halves. I think you could have John Egan in the centre, Shane Duffy on the right of a back 3, and Dara O'Shea on the left of a back 3. And that's something that he's been speaking about, like wing backs, and doesn't have a huge amount of wingers in the squad. So I think he's safe enough to suggest that would be the system. And really, you want all those players in the side. Then this is the thing. I think Seamus Coleman would be right wing back in that scenario. And it's possible Matt Doherty could miss out on that Portugal game. The alternative is that he plays left wing back, but I think it's more likely it's James McLean Ryan Manning is the other one in consideration there, but I just wonder for Portugal away, do you go for the McLean, that sort of combative streak and that energy? Then I think in the middle, if you're talking about a 3-4-3 or 3-4-2-1 or whatever way you want to describe it, I think you're probably looking at Josh Cullen. And the second one, yeah, maybe Conor Hourihane, but there's a real issue with game time for the midfielders, that Hourihane, Hendrick, Arthur, Jason Malumbi, who's joined West Brom, which is good news. Like, none of them have been playing. Cullen has been playing, but the other four really haven't. So that's a bit of an issue, that area of the pitch, I would think, and maybe with a view to not the idea of resting players, but I think you have to get the balance right between who do you want to come in for the Azerbaijan game. And I think that's where you'll see some, and Serbia at the back of it. And that's where you might see a little bit. So does he go for, I think Cullen, because he's been playing. Hourihane is the other one. Could he go for someone more defensive than Hourihane in that engine room area? But I don't know if Harry Arthur or Malumbi have played enough. That's a debate, that second position. And then in terms of like the 3 forward players in that system, I think Adamida would have a good chance of playing. I think, just that sort of, again, someone who can stretch teams a bit. He's got a bit to learn, but does he go for Adamida in that game? And would it be something like Daryl Horgan on one side or in the two behind? And then you're looking at maybe Parrott, Now, it could be James Collins. That sort of leads the line and he goes for a slightly more experienced player, or Shane Long. But it's actually difficult. He's lost Alan Brown, who definitely would have started from the way he was speaking, and Callum Robinson. And it's possible he might decide for Portugal, actually, that you need maybe 3 central midfielders, in the middle. So you go for Cullen, a Hourihane and a Hendrick, say, and then it's just like 2 forward players. I think that's part of the equation. But it's a tough one, like that front. Like, I think Brown and Robinson are big losses in the context of a likely team.
Yeah, Robinson's a big loss. Even he wasn't fully fit, but against Serbia, when he had a bit more in his legs, you just saw he was a bit of a threat and a bright spark. And I think he faded as that international window went on. And then he scored 2 goals at Stamford Bridge. Like, we really got him back into match sharpness for his club team. But he is a big loss.
He did. Sorry, yeah. The one I forgot to mention there, I knew there was someone obvious I was forgetting, was Aaron Connolly. Sorry, Aaron Connolly, I think would be a very strong contender. I think to start. He has played a half in the Premier League against Watford, and. But it's just the shape of it. The other player he's missing that's a big sort of loss is Jason Knight, because he was very good in Hungary. And I think if he's going to play that 3-4-3, it worked quite well in the second half of that game with Horgan and Knight on one side. So it's just how he chooses to deploy those forward players, So there's debates to be had. But to answer your original question, you just can't afford to say put out a team against Portugal that's a sort of a sacrificial lamb side.
He's not in a strong enough position to do that. He's not in a strong enough position to go out and take a 5-0 hammering. That scoreline's in my mind because you think of Arteta under pressure, and there's a big difference between 5-0 and losing 3-1. There just is. Yeah. So he's played 13 games as manager, 1 win thus far. It's a 3-match window. We'll have Azerbaijan, then we'll have Serbia. So I would think 4 points from these 3 is a very fair ask, as in beat Azerbaijan, a spirited draw against Serbia, or will 4 points even lead to disgruntlement still?
I think it would depend on the manner of the draw against Serbia you refer to there. Like, the big thing about this window was that you've got fans back in the stadium, so that'll give you a little. We've been part of these debates around the Kenny era, and I think we're both we've talked about this, like, they've been quite fatiguing, particularly closed doors, that you don't have the fans in the stadium, which is like the best. In some ways, it's a most reliable gauge maybe of the mood on the ground amongst match-going supporters and spectators. So that's why the 2 Dublin games are so important. Have to beat Azerbaijan really in every scenario, I think. The Serbia one, I mean, you really want to win the game, of course, and that's, I think 6 points would be absolutely huge for Kenny, and even huge in terms of having some interest in the remainder of the group, even if everything is still very much weighted against you. But I think if it's 4 points, it would need to be a really good performance in the draw against Serbia, something to really say, okay, this is so much better than what we saw in March, and that's sort of it. And I think rather we will debate it and speculate it, and pundits and people will debate it and speculate over it. But I think even things like the response at the final whistle of that draw will tell you a lot about how people are feeling about things. And it's good that we have that. I think it feels that bit more real, I think, in terms of gauging what the public opinion really is on this.
Just on Portugal then on Wednesday, so I was just glancing back to the team which Belgium knocked out back at Euro 2020. Yeah. So Patricio was in goal, Dalot was at right back, they had Ruben Dias, who by the way signed a new contract today. He's going to stay at Man City until 2027. So Dias and Pepe, Guerreiro was at left back. And I mean, you remember Portugal, it was really like solid base and let the three boys up top try and cause some mischief. So against Belgium, at this stage, Bruno Fernandes had played himself off the team, which is kind of notable and is a curious thought when you think Ronaldo arriving as the main man against Manchester United. I'm not sure if Bruno loves the idea of not being the main man. We'll talk to Stephen Hunt about that in a couple of minutes' time. But it was Renato Sanchez, who had a really good Euros. He had played himself in. Palhinha and then Moutinho, who took care of Pogba and Fred at the weekend. Moutinho was in. And then it was Diogo Jota, Ronaldo and Bernardo Silva. So Ruben Neves was on the bench, Bruno Fernandes was on the bench. Are we expecting something broadly similar here as Ronaldo, with the eyes of the world on him, tries to score his 110th international goal? He has a habit of rising to these occasions. When he can grab attention, he tends to. Yeah.
Well, he's had a quiet week, really, hasn't he, Ronaldo? Well, the key thing is Renato Sanchez is out.
Okay. Well, that's only Bruno or Ruben Neves coming in.
Yeah, just like that's who they can turn to. They're not worrying about League One minutes. But no, that is the most significant thing. Okay. Kenny actually was watching their games and spoke about how impressed he was by Renato Sanchez. But there's obviously an element of that changing. But Fernandes comes into the situation. But yeah, it's just interesting. I think actually Owen and Jeremiah talked about this morning. Some of the debate in Portugal has been around the merits of a wing-back system or not as well. And that seems to be part of the discussion there. And they have a lot of talent to get into that side, as you mentioned. And the modern Ronaldo is the one who scores, a bit like the Manchester United debate. Like he now does all of his goal scoring inside the box pretty much. And as a result, you have to tailor your other attacking options around that. Although that quite suits the sort of Jota, and they're well adaptable to coping with that situation.
And there is it can be a misleading statistic, that, because if you think of one of the more memorable goals at the Euros, as you're talking there, it is Ronaldo sprinting the length of the pitch from his own penalty area to the other end of the pitch for a tap-in. So he can still run on occasion. He mightn't do it 20 times a game, but if there's a break on, he can move with it.
Oh no! I mean, what do you talk about Ronaldo? It's like the extreme sort of physical conditioning. That's what you expect. And as you said, the players they have, they're all actually quite used to some degree of playing at clubs where the attack and movement is pretty fluid. Yeah. João Felix is out of the squad as well. He's the other big absentee. But again, you look at the attacking list and it's just star-studded player after the other.
Well, Bernardo Silva's in good form at the moment, I would say. He's played minutes for City and he's moving quite well. Ronaldo will have a point to prove for various reasons. Diogo Jota's getting minutes and is playing quite well. Moutinho, again, alongside Neves, was really impressive for Wolves. I mean, they absolutely blitzed Manchester United in the first half yesterday, in particular, more than took care of Fred and Pogba. So Dias, Pepe, I don't know, Dan, what's a good night here, really, if Portugal are in the mood?
Yeah, I think a good night is something that you can watch the game, and you can't have to set the bar higher than this, but not something that's some kind of a drubbing, like a comprehensive drubbing, but that is a plausible scenario. Sometimes these September windows are funny though. You can have a bit of a major tournament hangover for the nation coming out of that scenario. They all have different things going on with their clubs, even though Ronaldo will be massively motivated to get this record. It's the big thing for him, which is a problem. But they sometimes can be funny windows, these. It's early season. Players, it could be a bit of Euros fatigue in some cases. They're back with their clubs, even though some of them are looking pretty sprightly, as you mentioned. You arrive, you've got a couple of days together. So sometimes these games aren't necessarily, they aren't at the pitch that you would be meeting Portugal in the summer. And they'll probably, you are hoping that they take a slightly dismissive view of Ireland to some degree. But like this is a very condensed campaign, and Portugal are in a battle with Serbia where every game matters.
Yeah.
There's no taking the foot off the pedal. But I think even to go back to your point, I mean, where the Irish team is probably stronger now, they've actually conceded some bad goals under Stephen Kenny, but the fact that they do have all of the first choice defenders available, which is an issue that Kenny's had at various times. Like John Egan hasn't been around, is quite important to how he wants to play. Coleman's been missing for games. Enda Stevens is missing, which is a problematic. But there is depth in that department that actually the strongest, the most experienced, and sort of the fewer question marks hanging over the Irish team is probably in that defensive area of the pitch. And you would think they can set up as like experienced professional players to be difficult to break down without being backs against the wall. That's the balance. So what you want is that even if it does end in defeat, you're coming out of it taking some momentum into the Azerbaijan and Serbia games rather than it being that kind of pummeling that is damaging. Like I feel like last November they played England in that friendly, which was a last minute idea to play England, and they actually sort of got taken apart and then at the start of the window, and that's probably quite demoralising no matter what way you look at it. So that's the scenario you want, is that you come out of the game taking some encouragement from it. Draw would be amazing, but in reality you just don't want it to be in crisis mode before you play Azerbaijan.
No. Listen, safe travels. Enjoy the game, Dan.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks very much.
You.
Dan McDonnell there of the Irish Independent. Football and Off the Ball is with thanks to Paddy Power. For information on responsible gambling, visit gamblingcare.ie. We are going to chat to Stephen Hunt in just a minute.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the best partnership since Vidic and Ferdinand. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, where the football chat flows like Jack Grealish's hair. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
You're welcome back. Very happy to say Stephen Hunt is with us on the line. Hey, Stephen.
Good evening, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm very well. I presume actually in your line of work this is a busy 48 hours for you. It's all going and phones are ringing and there's last minute inquiries here or there.
Yeah, when JP phoned me, I said, listen, only because I like you, I'll give you 10, 15 minutes of bits and pieces going on. So I said, I will have to hang the phone up. I'll put you down if I need to. So I'm sure you're well aware of that. But
we're forewarned. So if your phone rings, you're about to get a lot richer. We'll see how quickly you answer that phone and then we'll know.
Football memories richer, Joe. That's the best way of putting it.
Come here. So a few things to talk about. We haven't really talked about Manchester United on the show this evening, or the Ronaldo move in all that much depth. They were at Molyneux yesterday. We'll get on to Ronaldo. Their performance yesterday at Molyneux, on the back of the performance against Southampton, I would say is very concerning. Wolves, in particular in the first half, absolutely bossed that game. Should have scored. Fred and McTominay, McTominay was missing actually. Maybe that was half the problem. Fred and Pogba proved they couldn't control a game. Like this Pogba situation continues to be an issue for them if they go with a 4-2-3-1. And like they got out of jail again. What's going on here with Manchester United? Because there was such a degree of promise at the start of the season, and now they've put two very, very average performances together. What did you make of them?
Yeah, listen, from a manager's point of view, they'll be obviously happy with the 3 points. The one thing I would say is Wolves' midfield is not a midfield that's dominant in the air. Are dominant on the floor, if you know what I mean. So they're really not an aggressive team when it comes to covering ground. And for them to struggle like they did physically with the Wolves midfield will be a real worry for Ollie, of course. But McTominay is the key for him, I think, when it comes to covering ground. I thought Fred did okay in the job he did, and he was covering 3 or 4 different positions, to be honest with you. You look at Fernandez, he ain't going to cover ground to see danger. He doesn't want to do it. He wants to conserve his energy. Pogba is never going to see danger early enough. He has the physical attributes to cover the ground, but I just don't think he sees it. So they will be worried about that position. But then again, they've gone and strengthened up top, so maybe they just want to outscore teams and beat teams with goals and net. Well,
even that's not happening. That was the problem. I mean, they scored 1 goal and they were lucky to score it in the end. It does underline this situation with Pogba is not going to sort itself out if he's playing as part of a 2 there in front of a back 4. I mean, it seemed to work okay with France, but you've got Kante there who's kind of superhuman at times.
Yeah.
in a lot of the big games and even the middling games, like if you're Solskjaer, you're looking at Pogba, you're thinking to yourself, I can't trust him in a 2. That's what yesterday reminded everyone.
Yeah, but I think you can trust Pogba in the big games. I know that will really confuse people, but I think he does come alive for the big games. And to Wolves away for them and Pogba's head wouldn't be massive. So to get through the game and win the game in second, third gear coming into international duty, they'd probably be happy enough. Listen, we would have seen a bit more urgency if Wolves had gone ahead, and they should have gone ahead, and even in the second half they should have scored and the game made a great save. Yeah. So listen, a worrying point of view, of course, is they don't see danger in midfield. They don't have enough legs to cover without McTominay, and McTominay's no Kante, that's for sure.
If you think to the Liverpool game last year, though, he put Pogba out in the right wing and went with Fred and McTominay in the middle because he just didn't trust Pogba in there for a big game. Like, I'm not sure he does trust him for the bigger games.
Yeah, the problem he has now, come the bigger games, Pogba now shouldn't be seen as a left-sided winger coming inside, because they spent enough money on talent to fit wherever they're Greenwood, Cavani, Ronaldo. Ronaldo's going to play in the middle. That's going to be, without question, he ain't going to play on the wing for sure. He might play as a 10 sometimes, but it'll be a 9 nearly 90% of the time. So everything else will fit around him. And you've got to think Greenwood, Lingard looks like he's going to stay. So there's a few that are going to stay, and 5 other places on the wings. And too many can be a problem too. And I think they have maybe one too many there.
Well, this is the bigger point. Like, we have to get on to the fact that Ronaldo is now going to cause them problems. You have to, first of all, your starting point is that Pogba in a 2 there is problematic. And we saw it again yesterday, and we saw it last season. And so that's an issue. So if you're then saying, well, Pogba has to go on the left-hand side of the 3 in front of the 2, if that's where we are, if that's where, you know, you feel that you're going to protect your back 4, that's where this Ronaldo thing does get tricky. So Ronaldo starts at 9. That means Greenwood is now not starting at 9. So that's not great for his development. But if you're looking at him and he's starting, so where do you fit in? And this is the question to you. If you have Ronaldo up top and you have Fred and McTominay for the bigger games, where are you fitting in the 3? Rashford, Pogba, Bruno Fernandes, Jadon Sancho, who they've paid a lot of money for, and Greenwood. That's 5 into 3. And that's, like, not to mention Cavani, Jesse Lingard, Daniel James. Like, you forget Juan Mata's still getting paid there. So that 5 into 3 even does not go. So it's like they've created almost a mini problem for themselves here. Not to mention Cavani is going to know he's the fall guy.
Yeah, listen, it wouldn't surprise me if 1 or 2 of them names leave. I think James going... I don't think James will happen. I think he likes James for the big games to be more of a defensive winger and to hit him on the counter-attack. I think he's probably one of the best counter-attack players they have. With Lingard has proven that at West Ham. They are the better counter-attack players for the big games. Sancho is the problem for me. They spent all that money on him. Where is he going to play? He started on the right yesterday. When he started on the left, went to the right. For me, could they have spent all that money? Should they have spent that money on a Declan Rice? Yes, in my opinion, and it'll only Solskjaer will know where they're all going to fit and what games. But as a winger, you need games to get into a rhythm. You need 3 or 4 games in a row to feel like you're in the groove. You're getting in nice little spaces. You're picking the ball up. You need the ball, and if you're coming in for 1 every 3-4 games, it's very hard to be in a rhythm. And the less so talented players like Stephen Hunt, to a certain degree, need games, let alone the better players that need games to be in a rhythm, to be able to control a ball in an environment now where you're coming inside in a tighter spaces and a lot quicker technically you have to be. So it's a big problem for Solskjaer. Only he will know.
Yeah.
Listen, he has played himself, Paul Pogba, into the last year of his contract by pretending to be happy all the last year. If he's that happy, he would have signed by now. For me, Pogba should be sold. Simple as.
Cash in on him.
Well, you're going to allow an agent that has the power and has the player to have the power, speaking for me, where if you have Paul Pogba and you get past deadline day, your situation already increases in your favour. So to allow him to go to that situation is bad from the club, but they'll obviously deal with it.
Well, the other thing is, if they are going to get him to sign now, given that Ronaldo has gone to 560k and Varane is getting 400, Pogba's going to cost a lot of money if they're going to re-sign him. So, yeah, what do you think is going to happen here then when they get down to finding their best team if Ronaldo's in? You kind of have to play Sancho if you've paid all that money for him, I presume they're pretty big on Greenwood's development. Rashford, maybe he's the fall guy. Pogba probably plays. Bruno's certainly going to play.
I think the fall guy for me would be a Martial. Saying Mbappe moves tomorrow to Real Madrid.
I'm not even bringing Martial into this. That still doesn't even solve your problem. Like one of Rashford, Greenwood, Pogba probably, or Sancho. I don't know. It all smacks of, and it does seem to be this way anyway, that this was just like a last minute opportunity. It arose. There was talk of him going to City. Oh my God, we can't let him go to City. Let's just get him in. He's happy to come, and we'll figure it out when he gets here. And now that he's here,
can you imagine Sir Alex Ferguson finding out that Ronaldo is going to go to Man City?
Well, by all accounts, he was on the phone to Ronaldo.
Would you blame him? All his legacy would be put over in a shadow if he went to Man City. So for him, that wasn't going to happen. And Ronaldo going there, I think it's a good fit for United. I don't think they have a number 9 that's going to be ruthless in front of goal. Cavani is very good in front of goal.
Okay.
But you would say Ronaldo is better in front of goal. And him being top goal scorer last year in Serie A, I think he was. How can you deny the guy in front of goal? He's that number 9 now.
He's in the top 2-3 greatest of all time. There's no doubt. So is Greenwood's development going to be halted here a touch then?
Yeah, Greenwood. I think Sancho will be a little bit frustrated with game time as well. They're all going to be halted. All of them suffer because they're all not playing regularly. They'll all want a Tuesday, Saturday for 2 or 3 weeks. Then they might want to rest during the week to get back to full freshness. But they're all going to suffer on the basis of this for sure. There's not one, unless one comes in, flies for one game and then comes back out. None of them are going to benefit really from it, to be honest with you.
It was notable in a few of the papers yesterday. There was some reporting from Turin, and it seems like Allegri went in and said he wanted full control of the team, full control of transfers, and he made it pretty clear to Ronaldo that Ronaldo would not be a guaranteed starter anymore, and he was on the bench even Juventus' most recent game. So that was one of the reasons Ronaldo wanted out. And you take last year, Juventus were scrapping for a Champions League spot in the Champions Leagues that Ronaldo's been a part of. They've been knocked out kind of like by Lyon and these kind of teams, last 16 quarterfinals. So it's debatable as to how good Ronaldo has made them. The question I want to ask you is, Ronaldo, as brilliant as he is, he must limit you tactically in what you can do. Like, you can't really play a high pressing game, for instance, if you've got Ronaldo there, or can you?
You can, because how have Barcelona done it all these years without Messi? Messi is not the best presser. He'll find himself little pockets of space like he did the other day for PSG and wait for the ball to come to him. I think Ronaldo will be the solely number 9. I want you in the box. If it comes to you, I want you to be able to manoeuvre a shot, and I want you to score goals. Yeah. That's all Ronaldo will care about coming back. That's all he's cared about for years now, is scoring goals. He's changed his game to be that way. Can you play a high press? Yeah, you can. You can probably sacrifice him being the high one that's going to be closing down the goalkeeper, closing down the centre-backs, but no more. Okay. And then after that, it's up to the rest of the boys to have enough energy to produce and win the ball back high up, for sure.
And in fairness, they'll go along with that. It is Ronaldo.
Yes, and you forget how good he is in the air. Like, centre-backs now, the Ronaldo of old has worked his way up to being an unbelievable header of the ball. So crosses in the box, he will come alive, make no mistake about it. And he is brave when he's going for it. So he will score goals. He will get the game time for obvious reasons. I think the Juventus thing is a little bit false. I think in Italian football, Juventus have probably financially had to sell him for the money he was on. And obviously United have the firepower to go and buy him. And there he is. And he hasn't been unveiled yet. But can you imagine the excitement when he does come?
Well, I guess, I'm kind of picking at the negatives. In fairness, there is an electricity about this whole move. Like, the place will just be buzzing this season. There'll be such a scamper to get tickets to go and watch United again. There'll be a buzz about the whole place. Where do you think this leaves United now in terms of a title race?
I think he'll give him a boost. I think you got to stand beside Ronaldo and realise his presence, and realise then what it will bring to the Lingards, the Sanchos. All them boys would have grown up watching him. What that will get from them watching him every day. It'll bring their game on 10-50%. They'll realise how professional Ronaldo is. Listen, you stand beside Ronaldo, you'll understand then where you're coming from. He is a real presence. I remember playing, and I remember, right, okay, I've got my opportunity here to rattle him, and I didn't. And I could have, and I don't know why, but maybe it was his presence that put me off actually hitting him in a tackle. And I regret it to this day not hitting him, but at the same time, he had a presence about him, and he had an aura that he thought, wow, this fella was good. And then back then he could run. Now he can't, but he's still going to be a massive influence on the rest of them.
That's quite interesting. He had a presence where you felt, I'm not so sure about whacking him.
Yeah, I remember he had a ball, and it was clear to me he was going to turn on the half turn. And listen, I didn't tackle him for some reason. I tried to take the ball off him, but really, back in the old days, there was no VAR. You could have actually hit him, then hit him, and got away with it, if you know what I mean. There'd have been loads of tackles, not just from me, and a lot going on back then. But now you can't do that because you've been sent off. But there was a chance for me to actually kind of let be known that I was there and ready to fight, but I didn't.
It's interesting. It's interesting because that would have been your game to an extent. I mean, that wouldn't have been unknown for you to do that.
Yeah, my game would have been mostly about ratting about, getting the ball back, and then driving it whenever I could. Listen, I always play myself down. I was better than what you think I was as well.
No. Sorry, I know how well you carried the ball. Don't worry.
Yeah. So it's one of them where I look at it going back. Should I've actually tackled him and let him be known and see how he reacted? And I didn't. And to this day, I regret it. But he definitely has. He is huge, Joe. He's massive. He stands beside you. You go, oh my God, like, what are you doing? Like, so he is massive. He has a presence. And even then, when the guys come back, when they play against him, they'll realise, okay, this fella's real.
Yeah. And I mean, you'd probably appreciate this. It's not like he doesn't look tall. He does look very tall even when you see him on TV, but I suspect his physique and the strength is even more noticeable when you're up against him physically.
Yeah, that was my main point when I was making. Literally, he is huge. His physique is massive. He's 36 now. He's still in prime condition. I think he obviously prides himself on really being top. And I think he's lost a little bit of bulk just to be able to be a bit more mobile than what he had a year or two. So he's trying to get obviously longevity out of it. Whether he gets 2 years here and 2 years abroad in America, then that'll be him done, I'd imagine.
Who's going to win the league then, by the way?
Oh, it's exciting. I actually, an educated guess, I would go with Man City just on the basis of Pep would be firing into his players. Now we don't need anything. He'll be bringing them all together, saying, how dare they say this and this. So City are strong. United are very good. Just United at the back. Even with their new sign, the French boy, I still think they're a bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
I like what Liverpool are doing at the moment. They seem to have a real focus back about them. Anfield being Anfield, I expect Liverpool to be closer than United and then to go from there.
Chelsea look very good as well. I mean, even the way they dealt with the sending off at the weekend, they just whipped off Havertz, jigged things around a bit and sat in and were as comfortable as you could hope to be at a full Anfield with basically Liverpool having 90% possession. Like Tuchel has a real focus and organisation about them as well. So you've got to think. I mean, we could be looking at United fourth here actually for all our talk of them.
Yeah, I agree. I think Chelsea are very good. I think they have an all-round manager that seems to have a bit of humour, but obviously a bit of ruthlessness as well. And I've liked the way Chelsea have started. And I would expect Chelsea to finish above United this year.
Before you go, Wednesday, Portugal. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, listen, I'm positive. I think Stephen Kenny needed time to bed in and get his bits and pieces over. I think they can get a positive result. I think they can catch him on the hop from the Euros. Hopefully, listen, I think credit to Shane Duffy's come back a revived, but a new guy, a new person. Looks like he's got a new attitude about him. So I think he will play. I think Matt Doherty can fit into the left wing back role if needs be. Seamus can play either side as well. Dara O'Shea, for the guy that people said he wasn't tall enough a year ago, has found himself in a position where he's deservedly going to be a starter. Johnny Egan as well. So we got some real strength at the back. Just going forward, can we get a goal? Can we get more possession? We'll have possession under Stephen for sure. But for me, I think if I had to say anything about Stephen Sender, can we get more goals from set pieces? We haven't done enough of that, I don't think. We normally do score goals no matter who's in charge, and we haven't got enough goals from set pieces. So I look forward to some new set pieces. Hopefully Keith Andrews will be working on the training ground, getting some new set pieces and being a bit more direct in our approach because we can head the ball.
Set pieces aside, so say Duffy comes in and he's a threat from set pieces. In terms of scoring from play, who's most likely to do it for you at this stage?
Listen, Aaron Connolly's got goals in him. Is he ready to play? Is he in it? Tribe Howard I think the low move will do him the world of good. He's playing regularly. I don't care if it's League One. He's got goals in him. I've seen that right the way through his age groups as he's come forward. He has goals in him. Listen, I just think we have goals in him. We need to be solid at the start, get our confidence back, get ourselves back to the Aviva in front of fans, and then let Stephen and the guys be positive. Like,
what's the word on Connolly, Stephen, in the game? Because he had a performance there against Spurs last season, and it was really impressive. And I remember Alan Shearer on Match of the Day was picking out not just his goals but the cleverness of his movement and saying this guy really has something, and it's just really stalled for him, and it's hard to know why exactly.
Yeah, I listen. Normally, if you have a player from Galway and he's doing really well, they'll be singing from the rooftops about him. So, and they're not. I think Aaron's got to focus solely on football, keep his head down. I'm sure he does anyway, but word on the street is that he needs to be more focused off the field than he is on the field. And if that comes right, and don't forget, he's only young. And in today's world, with social media, there's so many distractions for him. Keep his head down, keep focused, and I'm sure his talent will come through and hopefully come to Ireland as well. Because
we've seen serious glimpses of some serious talent.
Yeah, well, that's the problem when we have all that age group and they all were touted about, say, 2 or 3 years ago being the next best thing. It's just not as easy. Listen, I like Adam Ida going forward. I think long-term Adam will lead the line for Ireland once he gets some games into him. I like them all. Listen, Troy's getting games now. They all need game time. It's like going to university without doing your leaving cert. So you need to have that little game time, that experience of under pressure, playing games, and at the moment none of them have. So, and not long, and they haven't had it long enough to be a real success for us. So I expect over time that they will, and then I expect 1 or 2 others that are not to be known to come out of the woodwork and start producing for us. That always happens. You always get 1 or 2 surprises, and we can do that.
Yeah. And what about Parrott then? I mean, he scored obviously against Andorra in June, and it was an important goal as well, and he took it well. He doesn't have lightning pace, but he has a lot to his game. What are you hearing about him?
Yeah, well, he's not one of them. You stand beside him, he's actually got a good physique. He's quite tall, he can head it. He's aggressive in his behaviour. He always has. Without the ball, so that won't be an issue. Again, he'll remember that time he scored against Andorra. It'll be a confidence booster. I expect him to play for sure in the team after that. So away at Portugal would be a big test. But having said that, I do have belief in him that the formation, whether it's 3-4-3, 3-5-2 or 4-3-3, I think we'll play with 3 across the front line and then take it from there. I think they have the ability. It's just when it clicks from.
Yeah. Well, then at least it's 2 games in Dublin with crowds.
Yeah. And big games as well, man. I think Azerbaijan are no jokes. They actually are a decent structured team. They won't be easy to break down, but if you can break down, we can get some possession. I think Ireland fans want a bit more of a tempo too, with a bit more closing down. It's in our DNA. We like to be up and at them, so hopefully we'll get that. Then with the possession based, listen, I think Jason Knight will be a big miss. I think he's really been the shining light out of that age group to come forward. I think he'll be keen to get back as fit as possible and keep him going.
Yeah, well, we can thank Rooney for that.
Yeah, that's a bit outrageous, to be honest with you. Do you know what? I remember going back to the days if the manager's playing, would you want to hit him? No, not really. You'd want to be protecting yourself a little bit. So I can imagine he's gone into that tackle. Can I actually hit Rooney?
Yeah.
And then ended up hurting himself. If that was the case, how it happened, it's disappointing, to be honest with you. And you know what? It's a big loss for Wayne Rooney as well. I know how much he thinks of him as a player. So maybe they needed to sell him and he's injured, so it's not ideal.
Yeah, no, it sure is. The only people you wouldn't tackle, your managers and Ronaldo. Everyone else got it from Stephen Hunt.
Yeah, Jesus. not ideal either, is it? I should have. I still regret it. So I remember playing with some, like Ray Houghton used to join in at Palace when he come to Palace and used to be hanging at the back post scoring headers like he did against England.
I'd say Ray still had it, did he?
Yeah, but he was cute enough. He used to play to the touchline and back to goal, so nobody could get near him to get at him. Like, so he used to score a few goals.
Did Stevie Coppell join in?
No, and I wouldn't have hit him because he signed me 3 times, so he definitely wouldn't have got tackles.
Fair enough. Listen, I'm sure you're busy. When is the transfer window closing? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yes. And believe it or not, I'm in a t-shirt now, but hopefully I'll be in a suit in a few hours, and I'll be I'll be in Dublin Airport on the way, hopefully, to get something completed.
Great, good man. Well, listen, we must chat to you about how the business is going generally at some stage in the future. But for the time being, Stephen Hunt, thanks again for the time, Stephen. Much appreciated. Take care.
Cheers, John. Thank you. Cheers, lads. Bye-bye.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the best partnership since Vidic and Ferdinand. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.